Hi there, and good afternoon. It's afternoon, right? Thank you for tuning in. I'm Shauna K. Lester, the founder of Memorable Essay and the creator of the IMG Residency Match Application Accelerator. Today I'm going to be talking about the most important part of your match application, so be sure to share this broadcast with someone who you know could benefit because it's going to be chock full of information that I've put together, but very useful, simple, and actionable information because this topic is so important. So we're going to just move right ahead and talk through it. So I wanted to start by talking about the fact that in my experience working with international medical graduates, there can be in this process sort of an obsession and a singular focus really with your step scores until about June, July, August of the process for a September application. No joke, every year over the last 6 or 7 years, like that is the trend. Focusing on those scores and just being busy with your regular life until June or July. But we don't want this to be the case for you because it is very unhelpful to your process, and we're going to kind of jump into it as to why. Right? So if you're an FIMG or if you're a foreign medical graduate, chances are that you're currently preparing for those exams for the first time, or you're actually resitting those exams. If they didn't go, one of them didn't go the way that you wanted to, you're actually taking a second stab at it. And for people who are at offshore schools, this is something that you're, like you've taken care of your step one, probably even your step two as well, and just looking forward to graduation, but still you're busy just trying to get through your coursework and get to graduation, which of course, as I said, is understandable, but we're going to take a look at why there also needs to be a focus, and a very early focus, on the other aspects of your application. And so the thing with the singular focus on the step exams that I wanted to talk about, in that it's something that, while it is important because obviously your step one score, the complex score for people who are domestic, but your step one score for every IMG, it's going to open the door to you even being considered as a serious candidate, and that's completely understandable. But because of that as well, it also means that you should get a high step score. Everyone who is taking part in this process is going to be expected to score as high as they possibly can. So having that high score in and of itself is not going to separate you in the process. So that's the first problem with being so singularly focused on how you're performing in your exams and busying yourself with other things to the point where you don't get to focus on other things, is that this is an expectation of you. So it's not necessarily novel in any way. All right. The other point is that you need to have this score to match. You need to have this pretty high step score to be successful, or at least coming close to the average in most circumstances, in order to match. But there are many other things that program directors and programs, everyone who's selecting, that they're going to be considering in order to make that final decision. The NRMP has tons of data on this, but there are many other very important things that make the top 10, including your letters of recommendation. And yes, you'll be surprised. People wait until June, July, August to request all of those letters, right? But including your letters of recommendation, your MSPE, your program evaluation, people consider whether or not they have prior knowledge of you, which really means that they've been able to see you work and to understand what your professional attitude is like. These things are also very important, as well as your perceived commitment to your specialty. So there are very many things in addition to your step one and your step two scores that are going to be considered to determine whether or not you are going to be invited to interview and whether or not you are going to be ranked highly by a program. So you need to be looking far beyond just your step scores and looking at other things as early as you start thinking of your steps. The other reason why this is really important is that at every single level, you want to be distinguishing yourself. So when you take your step exams, the goal is to separate yourself from the rest of the crowd based on how you scored or how you performed in those exams. But the same thing is true when it's time to put together a written application. You want your written application to separate you from the rest of the pack in terms of the quality of that application. when it's time to have your interview, you want your interview responses to be separating you from the rest of the pack. Any sort of follow up that you do, you also want it to keep separating you. So the focus is that at every single level of the process, you need to be separating yourself from everyone else. And that takes a very different kind of focus very early on in the process, because it's almost like you can't accidentally be excellent in the process, right? You want to be well informed and you want to be strategic so that you can separate yourself at every level, not just with the step exams. All right. So, how do you go about doing this instead of having that focus right down to the end on what am I scoring and leaving everything else to chance? Number one is that you need to think of the entire application as just as important as your step scores. And so what I mean by that is that when you ask the question, what is the most important part of your application to residency? The answer is every single part. That's the answer. And in the words of a former client, her description of it, or the way that she explained it based on when she went on interviews, she ended up matching at a university program. Like, her take and her feedback was that programs looked to the quality of the application as a representation of how much effort you put into task. That's her words. That's her way of saying it. My way of saying that is that people look to this thing for your professionalism, right? You know, people who half-ass work, if you've ever had that kind of stuff where you do arrangements where you do group work with people and they send you something and you want to send it back to them and ask them if this is the draft or if this is the final product, because you can look on the quality of someone's work that they put out and tell how professional they are, how serious they are, the kind of time, effort, and thought that went into something. And so programs are going to be looking at every single part of your application for an indication of this. You will produce something of that high quality, of that professional level, when you view everything that you're doing as just as important as your step scores. All right, that's the first step in terms of what you need to be doing. The second point, which I spoke about earlier, is that you want to approach this with the idea that at every single stage, people will know you are exceptional and there will be something that they will remember about you. So one of the things that you can think about is, like, if you're a gadgets person, if you're into Apple products, when you think of your Apple product, you think of how well made it is, how sleek it is, how easy it is to use. You have that messaging in your head because it's been told to you again and again. When you think of KFC, if you like to eat fast food, you think of chicken, right? Like, they're not specializing in chicken today and then tomorrow they're selling you the best fish in the world. There is an idea that you have when you think of your favorite gadget, or you think of your favorite airline, like, you know, whatever your favorite airline is for regular travel, you know, JetBlue. When you think of that, there's an experience, there's a sort of message that sticks out to you about that one thing. And so you want, with every stage of your application, to be giving people this one message, this one constant message that makes them think of you. So if they think of their phone and they think of ease, how easy it is to use, when they think of you, you want them to think, okay, this applicant brings us a certain kind of value in that they're focused all the time. And they have tons of examples from your messaging about that. Or this program brings us the value that we need in terms of them being very mature in how they operate in professional situations, even if they're very young. So you really want to have that messaging sticking with people for every single part of your application that they touch. And that's only going to happen if you take that approach from the beginning. The third part is that, and this actually is really important because I've seen this happen with quite a number of people by now, actually, over the years, is that by not paying attention to one part of your application, that can be the reason that you have to apply all over again. So for example, if you're applying to things that are just way out of your league, you're somebody who you've had to retake step 1 and step 2, or just step 1, or you barely passed your step 1 exam, you're an FMG, you're not a US citizen, and you're applying to surgery, you're applying to radiology, you're applying to all of these programs that are objectively way out of your league, right? Like, you want to dream big, but you also want to have a knowledge of the process and match rates and within reason what people are looking for. If you have a flawed strategy, you will have to undoubtedly go back to the drawing board. It can also be things that are a lot more simple. I've seen people reapplying to the match who, when you take a look at their CV, I have to tell them honestly and tell them with love that you can just consider what you sent before as a non-application, right? Because of the quality of this application, you might as well have just not sent anything at all, because you have all of these achievements and they're not captured in your CV. They're really poorly captured to the point where nobody is going to be impressed with them. All right. So what you don't want is for one aspect of your application to be the reason that you have to reapply to the match all over again. It doesn't make any sense in terms of the best way to spend your time and the way to invest your energy. So these are 3 of the reasons that I want you to consider every single aspect of your match application to be the most important aspect. All right. That brings me into talking about the IMG Residency Match Application Accelerator, which I'm really excited to talk about because in 2020 and for 2020, it's going to be so much stronger and so much more, I guess, what is the word? More holistic than it's been before. So it's stronger, it's more holistic, it's based on feedback from different individuals over the last 6 years. And we're going to be focused on 3 different things that are really important, some of which I mentioned talking a while ago. The very first one is your application strategy. And what that is taking a look at where you are in the process versus where you want to be, right? So looking at the different strengths and the different weaknesses that you're bringing into this application process and the outcome that you want. You need to figure out how to best leverage your strengths, how to talk about your weaknesses, how to make up for your weaknesses if that is the case, because altogether, everything that you bring to the table is going to be considered. So you need to understand, based on what I have, do I have high scores? Do I have low scores? Do I have strong letters? Do I have weak letters? For people who are FMGs, like, do I have letters that can vouch to my clinical skills in a US setting? Do you have US clinical experience? What are the things that are working for you, the things that are working against you? Or have you been out of medical school? Did you graduate from medical school a very long time ago? All of these things matter, and based on that profile that you bring to the table, you need to figure out what is the strategy that can get you to your goal. And so that's the first part of the process. Me, as well as a team of really amazing young IMGs, in age, if they consider themselves young, but definitely very mature, knowing what they're doing. We are going to be working with you to make sure that you have the best strategy possible in terms of going forward. Then the next stop is my sweet spot, which I really enjoy doing this work because I think it's just so powerful, and I know that it's something that you will have to do time and again. So it will seem that, it's just for this match process, and I mean, obviously getting into residency is a door to a whole lot more, but coming up with messaging and really advocating for yourself through your messaging, through your story, is something that you will have to do over and over and over again in your life in order to get the opportunities that you need. So the next step in the process, after we have your strategy all worked out, is to focus on your messaging. And so what we're doing, why I had spoken about as that one key main message, the core message that goes into every aspect of your application. One of the big mistakes that people make is that they sort of kind of have messaging, it's kind of sort of persuasive, but then when you actually look into their application, every document is giving you a different message. And like I was saying before, it's like if you used your iPhone today and it was amazing, and tomorrow it gives you some problems, or if you fly JetBlue today and it's early and it's on time, and the next day it's late and you miss every appointment that you had, you're not going to trust that brand or that person, what they're offering, because of the inconsistency, the up and down. You always want your messaging that talks to who you are to be very consistent, so that people that whenever I get John, whenever I get Jane, this is what I'm getting each and every single time. It's extremely important. The messaging must show why you're unique, and it needs to be consistent in all the different aspects of your application. And so that's the next part of the process that we focus on. The last part of the process is also extremely important. Again, really another lifelong skill important for your residency success is then the writing and the interviewing skills. It's you have that strong messaging, but then how do you translate it? How do you translate it into a memorable personal statement, into a CV that works really well for people who are reading well, as well as for people who are skimming? How do you translate that into strong letters, into an amazing MSPE? How do you translate that into interview responses, into interview questions, into following up with your interviews? How do you translate that even when you're reaching out to somebody who you want them to give you a clinical experience so that people can see you work? There is a specific skill set. There are writing tools. There is an interview skill set. There are ways to interview so that people remember you, so that you can guide the interview, so that people eventually rank you highly, so that these program directors, anyone who is on the selection committee, thinks of you in a certain way and you stand out in their mind. And so you want to learn those writing tools and those writing skills. You need to master those interview skills at some point, because it's going to keep separating you for the rest of your life whenever you're applying to things that are competitive. So those are the 3 stages of the process: working on your strategy, working on hammering down that main message that shows why you're unique and that is consistent every time, not getting different things every time, and then focusing on writing in a way that's memorable and also communicating in a way in an interview that's memorable. And so, as I said, I'm really excited to get going on this year. For everyone who's looking to start 2020 off on the right foot, because you're not going to leave your application until the last minute, and you really want to start early because you understand the value of the entire application and not just your step scores, and you want to get it out of the way, I definitely want to meet you. I want to have a conversation with you. The number one feedback that I get from people who go through this process is that they're really glad that they started early, because they had no idea how much work goes into this process, and actually all of the different strategies that they can use to be successful, that if you have 2 months to implement that sort of thing, it just doesn't have the same effect as having as many months as you need to do so. So go to the description, to the link description for this video, and apply for a free consultation so we can talk about the IMG Residency Match Application Accelerator and how you can be a part of it if we're a good fit going forward starting in January. All right, take care. If you're watching this on the replay, thanks for watching, and definitely be sure to like and to share it with your networks. So I'll be back this week talking to you some more, but go ahead and apply for a consultation, because I'm working with a handful of people in January because these services are highly personalized, as you can imagine, because there's so much to be done when it comes to an individual specific story. So go ahead and apply so you can be in that first batch of individuals, and I'll talk with you again. Take care. Bye.